This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
So this guy, Travis Decker, he gets online, starts searching for Canada relocation, how to get to Canada. And then he searched for methods of killing as well, plastic bags, zip ties, location choices, things of that nature. Then he gets the kids, and he's acting weird. And mom noted it, but it was his time. It was his time to go have time with the girls. And that's the last time she ever saw him. What the hell do you think's going through this guy's mind? I know that's a very insanely broad question, and we probably never know the answer to it, but he's planning on getting to Canada. He wants to get his girls, and clearly he's planning on killing them as well.
It's insidious. You know, there are a couple of things that we look for when parents murder their children. The first, of course, is psychosis. And we think of the case of Andrea Yates, who was schizophrenic, home alone with 5 kids, hallucinating about the devil, and had the delusion that the children were possessed, and the only way that she could free them and send them to heaven with God was to drown them in the bathtub. And she killed all of them. So that's a very different case than something like this, where you look at, most often we would be looking at, was this about revenge? Was this about trying to cause pain to the children's mother because he was angry at her? His life was in the toilet. He was deteriorating. And how can we fathom someone who thinks that way? I mean, I think for you and I, it's just impossible to put yourself in the mind of a person like that. But yeah, you know, he was diagnosed borderline. I would guess that there was a lot of antisocial personality, meaning psychopathic traits mixed in there. Who knows how his military service affected him, diagnosed with PTSD. But there are millions and millions of people diagnosed with PTSD. It doesn't make them violent. It doesn't make them hurt their children. So it's a hard one to put together. But my guess is that there was this revenge element to it, which, of course, made him very dangerous and inappropriate for ever spending time with them.
Is this an example of a family annihilator?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Also called Familicide.
Yeah. Because we've talked about that. Alec Murdaugh is one that they brought that up in. And basically it kind of comes down to no shit's given. The world, like everything in my world is gone and going to be destroyed. So I might as well take everyone else out with me.
Yeah. And you throw in, as we always say with Cluster B, you get a mix of all these awful traits in the bad criminals. And the narcissism, the children belong to him. They're his. They're sort of like an extension of him. Therefore, he can do what he wants with them. And that's another warped perception.
The bodies were discovered on June 1st. They found his DNA there. It was very fast when they found him. Authorities are now looking for him, as you know, out by you in the mountains in Washington. They assume he might be headed towards Canada. How do things like this, I mean, is there a typical way that something like this ends? And my gut is going to tell me that they're going to find him dead somewhere. Yeah. But I don't know if they're going to find him dead from suicide or they're going to find him dead from just, living in the mountains and something accidentally happening. I don't know. Do people like this just tend to end it for themselves or
very often? Yeah, very often they do. They may have a fantasy at first that they're going to survive this somehow, but then once it's done and reality hits, you're not going to get out of this. They will suicide or try to do the, suicide by cop in some way. And that would be my first guess about how it ends.
And that's interesting because I don't know. I mean, again, you're not dealing with common sense here. I was going to say common sense would say, no, common sense doesn't matter in this equation.
It's an entirely different world. I was not directly involved. I was asked to be involved and I declined. A woman also in the Pacific Northwest, interestingly. So I can say this, she was not my client, but I was contacted by somebody about trying to evaluate her to help her.
Yeah.
And I said, that's one I can't validate that. But she had had a very brutal, bad divorce with her husband, was very angry at him, borderline personality, and had a newborn baby, and left and actually went to a women's shelter and smothered the baby, and then tried to overdose herself. And she did not die. And of course, the baby did. And so she was charged with, I don't remember what the specific charge was, but they wanted a psychological excuse to, get her out of the criminal thing. And in that case, I think there was possibly major depression with some psychotic features. And it was this sense of, well, I can't go on anymore, so I'm going to take the baby with me and we'll be together in the afterlife. And so you can get this kind of strange delusional thinking going that's maybe not fully psychotic, but it's not grounded in reality. So you can see people with very strange ways of perceiving the world.
I'm going to go, and I'm too selfish to be without you. So I love you so much. I'm going to take you with me.
Take you with me. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the best place for you. Better than being with mom over here on this earth who's treating you well. And it's also, it's got to be some sort of a dark F you to mom as well. Of
very true.
You have your stuff together. I don't. And screw you for that.
Yeah. It speaks of rage.
Yeah.
It really, really speaks of rage.
How the hell do we get ahead of these sort of people? Because they seem to be everywhere. I mean, I don't know. I struggle with this one because remember, like back in the 80s and 90s, you'd hear about these stories about the Susan Smiths of the world and that sort of stuff. And it would be like, oh, that'd be one of the big stories of the year. I remember in my yearbook in school, you'd get like the end of the year. Here's like what happened in pop culture or the news and all that. And I remember like Susan Smith being in one of those of like, and this horrible mother did like, oh my God, yes. Now it's like every other week or maybe every week. And there's stories far worse than even what she did. And it's happening all the time. Are we in that more of an unstable society than we were 20 years ago? Or are we hearing about these things more because they're being reported more and people are getting away with it less? And it's being brought to light, and there maybe was a lot more going on back then, but it was easier to slide under the radar back then with less technology to monitor?
That would be a really interesting one for me to research and try to get into the Justice Department data and see what are the statistics about filicide, and is this happening more often? It sure seems like it is, but we also have the internet, which is giving us much more news. And, murder-suicides happen more often. But we do live in an increasingly violent society with a lot of people who are homeless, a lot of people who are on drugs and altering their reality in ways that, hurt their families. So I'm going to look that up. I don't know what the data would show, but that's a really good question.
It does make you wonder. Obviously, this is a world that you live in, and I'm sure you think about this stuff, and there is no easy answer. There is no easy solution to any of this. But, from your experience, your expertise, if you were to try and get ahead of this sort of situation before the parent that has the problem gets the uninterrupted access, the unmonitored access with the kids, what would be some easy things? First, I want to talk about what we could put in place if, the right people were doing it, like politicians and such that would need to be there. But then I also want to talk about what a mother can do with what exists, or a father can do with what exists in place. So let's start with in a perfect world, Shavaun, and Shavaun can lead the way. And here's what we're doing, kids. With a big scepter. You need a scepter, I think, too. That glows. And it's like, the scepter says, and then you can tell everyone what to do. What would you do? How would we fix this?
This is so hard, how to be succinct with that. Number one, fund child welfare agencies and and make sure they have small caseloads, that they follow up, that they monitor. If there's ever a problem reported, they get out there. And I do think that they're well-meaning people, but we're not giving them the resources they need. So we need to do that. We need as you say, the politicians to get involved and to reevaluate all the biases that exist in the laws now toward family reunification. We need to change that. But then we need places where these kids can be loved and nurtured and taken care of. So how can we incentivize people to do foster care? Mm-hmm. And that's one that would take probably a creative team to come up with. But we need to, do you give tax credits to people who can take on a couple of extra foster kids? I know for many people, it's perhaps a way of making extra money, and that's you don't want people doing it just for the money. But on the other hand, it is expensive. And so that would be one area to look at. Can we, and then of course, once you determine that people are qualified to be foster parents, have social workers that go out regularly and monitor and do home visits, do unannounced home visits, and come in and make sure that those kids are being taken care of. Mm-hmm. So we need a better social safety net. There are organizations online, and I wish I had the names handy, of support groups where parents who are caught in this dilemma can meet online and give advice to each other and to try to come up with how do we present in court if you have to represent yourself pro per because you can't afford an attorney, how to do that. There's a woman, I know the name of the woman who started a big organization is Tina Swithin, Within. And so Googling Tina Swithin would bring up her organization, but I forget the name of the organization, but that's what they do. It's a grassroots run by mothers who have been in this scenario, and in some cases, they have had people involved in their organization who did have the children murdered. And, so there's just a wealth of knowledge and resources out there. But there's a lot of homework to do. And this idea that somebody who's homeless, who's mentally ill, who's unstable, is given any unsupervised time with children, we've got to take it seriously.
It seems like such an obvious thing, but one of those where nobody wants to basically upset something. Nobody wants to upset basically the system, quote unquote. Right. The only one you're going to really upset is the unstable parent. And maybe the kids, if they don't quite grasp why this is not going on. I would say the kids may be a little bit more understanding, if they're of a certain age. They can tell if something's wrong with mom or dad. You're going to upset that unstable person to begin with, which can then be dangerous, if that person is just free and out there.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.